Hello friends, in this video I will take you through the step-by-step process of preparing and acing an Amazon interview. Now the reason I have command on this subject is because me being a career coach, I've coached numerous candidates who have successfully aced the Amazon interview and gotten job offers. Now note, Amazon interview is a typical behavioral interview, which means that you will be asked questions with regards to tell me about a time when you did X, Y, Z. Now this XYZ is actually Amazon's 14 leadership principles. So they will be asking you behavioral questions around their 14 leadership principles. And I will put those 14 leadership principles here and also leave the link to those 14 leadership principles in the description of this video. Let me call out a few leadership principles that Amazon has. They are such as customer obsession, ownership, invent and simplify, learn and be curious, be frugal, and so on and so forth. So they have these 14 principles that they are making sure that the candidate that they are interviewing has demonstrated those principles in past and would be able to reapply them once he or she joins Amazon. So what you need to do as step one is list down all the key achievements or all the great projects or examples that you have from your previous life, which is from your previous work experience. List them down. There should be at least 8 or 10 examples that you can list down. Once you've listed down those examples, you just need to keep them on the side. We move to step 2. Now in step 2, what you do is you review these 14 principles and go through them. Just read each one of them and read what they mean. Again, I will leave the link to where on the Amazon website you can go and find these leadership principles and the description of each of the leadership principles. So go through them, read them, and have an understanding so you can understand what each principle means. Now one call out before moving further. I have 2 requests for you. In case you find value from this video, please press the like button as this keeps me motivated. Also press the subscribe button so you get notified as soon as I put a new content on this channel. On this channel, I put content pertaining to finance and career success for early and mid-career professionals. Also, in case you want to support me for creating unbiased content, you can do so on patreon.com. I will leave the link to my Patreon page in the description of this video. Now let's get rolling back into the video. Step 3, now that you understand the principles, is to go and check the job description. For most job descriptions, these leadership principles would be weeded in the job description somewhere. So somewhere in the job description, it would say have customer obsession or be frugal, or innovative or simplify, and so on and so forth. To start marking those key words that you see in the job description, which are also in the 14 principles, and mark those principles out. Now, a particular job description won't have all 14 principles there. They may have like 8 to 10. What this tells you is these are the key principles out of the 14 that the hiring manager is looking for. Now, it may not necessarily be that every time in the job description, the leadership principles are called out exactly in the same wording as in the leadership principles. Let's say here the word is customer obsession or ownership or invent and simplify. So it is not necessarily that they will put out bullet points in the job descriptions just saying these are the 8 or 10 leadership principles that we are looking for. It will be worded somewhere in the job description and may even come as innovation. If it says innovation, it means they're looking for the invent and simplify leadership principle, and so on and so forth. So you may need to work out a bit if it's not very clearly spelled out. There are certain managers who would clearly spell it out in the job description, while there are certain managers who won't be spelling it out clearly in the job description and would have it reworded in the job description. So you need to decipher from the job description what are the key leadership principles that the hiring manager is looking for. Now go back to the list of your leadership principles and mark the ones which you found in the job description. Those 8 or 10 leadership principles that you found, just mark them and put them in the top of the list, because these are the ones with where and at which you need to put the maximum focus. Now what you need to do is your 10 examples that you have, start matching them against those leadership principles. So for instance, if you have an example which is about innovation, simplify, put that example in front of it. Make sure here you start with the top leadership principle and all the way, then go down all the way to the bottom, because The ones at the top are the ones which are most important because these are the ones which you found in the job description. So you need to make sure you put your best example against the top key leadership principles. Because when in the interview you are asked about a particular leadership principle, you don't want to hold on to your best example to the end, or for a particular leadership principle which they may even not ask you in the interview because it was not exactly relevant for them. So make sure you start with the most important leadership principles which were called out at least once, twice, or thrice in the job description, which means it is most important, and then put your best example against it, assuming that the example represents that particular leadership principle. Now here also note that you will find there will be certain examples, rather most of the examples, you can play them and put them against different leadership principles. So there can be example where you talk about customer obsession, but you were also frugal, or you were also innovating and simplifying. And hence you can use it both against innovation and simplify, and invent and simplify, and also with customer obsession. So here you just need to figure out where you fit it in, because the idea is you need to make sure that there is an example against each one of the leadership principles. You don't want to leave any leadership principle empty, even the ones which are not called out in the job description. Because what if the interviewer feels that he or she has more time and they just want to probe you on more leadership principles, and suddenly you're not ready for an example for the leadership principle which was not called out in the job description but is still a leadership principle in Amazon. So make sure you have an example for each one of those leadership principles, but starting with the most important one, setting the best example and keeping the best example for the most important leadership principle. Now once you figured out what are the leadership principles you would be asked, what are the examples that you will use to answer or address those leadership principles, now comes the time to prepare for those examples. How would you deliver those examples? For delivering those examples, you will use the CAR model, where C stands for context. So first and foremost, you share the context of that example. What happened? Where were you? What was your role? What was the situation? What was the challenge? Then A in the CAR model stands for action. What actions did you take in order to solve for the challenge? And R is the results. What were the results? For this, I made a separate video where I explain in detail how you can go about addressing and answering, rather acing behavioral interview questions using the CAR model. I highly recommend you check it out as I explain in detail how you can go about answering and acing behavioral interview questions. Lastly, once you prepared each of your examples, make sure you also write each of your examples down, but in bullet form. So an example, just a bullet of that example, and then one or two things that you want to call out in the context, one or two things, or three or four things that you want to call out in the action. Action should be heavy, and then one or two things that you want to call out in the result. If it's a remote interview, even better. Write it down in that bullet format and keep that document where you write it down in front of you, so you can refer to it if and when needed. And obviously, if you refer to it in front of the camera, it may seem that you are kind of cheating or you're looking down. So for that, what you need to do, or one trick that you can use, is always hold a pen, and when you are being asked the question, try taking some notes. Appear as if you're writing something. So for the interviewer, they will think that you have a certain document in front of you where you're taking notes. So even if you're not taking notes, you just pretend you're scribbling, so later you can refer to the document and then address the question. This way, they won't think that you're cheating, they will think that you're reading through the notes that you already took. While what you're essentially doing is you're making sure that the example that you gave, you've covered all the points that you listed out here. Because at the end of the day, I normally say this in most of my videos, the job of the brain is not to memorize, it is to process. So make sure you keep your brain's processing power available in the interview as against trying to memorize what you have to say. Last tip is about practicing. Practicing your delivery. You need to come across as confident, someone who knows their work and talks and communicates in a very concise and precise manner and is not just all over the place. For this, the best advice is to ask a friend to sit in front of you and ask you a couple of questions, a couple of behavioral questions, and then you can go about answering them in front of that particular individual. Other than that, I also offer coaching and mock sessions for interviews, so you can reach out to me. I will leave the link to my calendar in the description box and the details on how you can book a session with me. So you can certainly reach out to me and I can have a mock session with you. I have recorded a couple of mock sessions for which I made a video and also put it on my channel, so you can check them out just for you to have an idea as to what do I cover in the mock session. And last suggestion would be just maybe record yourself, like I'm recording myself here. So put a camera in front of you and just deliver your example. and then press pause and check yourself out, how you're speaking, how you're talking. The key ideas here are: one, you cover everything that you want to cover in that particular example, so you don't miss anything. Second, you have a flow. So you start with the context, explain the context, then move into the action, and then move into the results. So there is a flow. Third is making sure it's concise, it's very simple to understand, so the interviewer who has not had any experience with that example can understand, can picture themselves in the situation, and can understand what kind of actions you took. Now, other than simply preparing to answer the leadership principle questions, you should also prepare for some very standard questions, such as why are you leaving your current job, or why do you want to join Amazon? I have a video where I talk about this particular question and how to address it, so check it out. Or introduce yourself. I have a video on that as well, so check it out, leaving the link here above. Or do you have any questions for me, which is the reverse interview questions? Also, I have a video on this. You can check out that video as well. These are very standard questions that you should expect to be asked, not just in Amazon interview, rather in any other interview with any other company as well. Thank you for watching this video. In case you like the video, I'm sure you will also find another video on my channel very valuable, where I talk about how you can go about controlling your nerves before going in an interview. Other than that, I've made another video where I talk about some secret success factors that you can make use of in your interview. Check out that video here as well. Thank you.